Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video we will be talking about the most important topic of political science, which is political ideologies. So the topic of political ideologies is very important with reference to CSS and PMS examinations. If we analyze the past papers, we get to know that the examiner always asks questions related to political ideologies or their characteristics, either in the portion of political philosophy or in part B of paper 1 and paper 2. The examiner might directly ask the question regarding the political ideologies, or the examiner might pick any certain characteristic and ask the student to analyze it in a real-time event. They might ask it in relation to Pakistan or some other countries as well. It really depends on the current affairs that are happening at that time. So it's very important to have a strong hold on political ideologies as they form the foundation of political science. So moving forward, it is important to understand what is meant by political ideology. So the word ideology is derived from the word idea, and political ideologies mean a set of values, beliefs, or ideas about the role of government, societies, or citizens. It actually reflects the way the society regulates, the society works with reference to the relationship between the state and the citizenry. So in this video we will only be discussing three types of political ideologies. The rest of the political ideologies will be discussed in the upcoming videos. So let's move forward. So we must have a very strong and foundational definition of political ideology. So in academic sense, it is known as a very strong and influential idea that shapes the political system of any country. Political ideology is not something that only has philosophical basis. It actually represents the kind of institutions that exist in a society and the kind of mobility and mobilization of citizens towards their rights and duties. And when we talk about political ideology, we talk about personal, we talk about professional, we talk about communal and social belief systems that exist in a society regarding decision making, regarding the process of decision making, law making, and political participation. So the first political ideology that we will be discussing today is liberalism. So liberalism in simple words can be defined as the system of freedom. It is because liberalism believes in individual freedom and individual autonomy. This can be manifested through individuals making their own political decisions, their own economic decisions with minimal interference of state. So this is a brief explanation of what liberalism actually is. And if we talk about characteristics of liberalism, liberalism is characterized by democracy, which means political decision making of people, where the people are given the right to vote, to choose their leaders, and to participate in the affairs of the government. And it also believes in secularism. So secularism in simple words means separation of religion and state. So liberalism actually supports the idea of all citizens being equal before the rule of law without any discrimination of caste, color, creed, or religion. Then liberalism also talks about freedom of media, which highlights the freedom of speech and the freedom of press, which means that every individual has the right to express their opinions, their views without any fear of external threat. And as I talked about secularism, the freedom of religion is also included in it. Then we talk about free market economy, which is the most important objective of liberalism. Free market economy actually refers to minimal interference of the state in the economic affairs of the country, which helps in the growth of a capitalist market where private sector has a lot of stake in the business affairs of the country, and the government has a very limited role. The role of government can be seen as that of a regulator more than anything else. Then if we talk about the importance of liberalism with respect to CSS and PMS exams, we see that the questions related to liberalism can be asked with context to USA, with respect to UK, with respect to Europe. And at the same time, if we talk with reference to Pakistan, questions like creating a link between liberalism and Pakistan could be asked. And these questions are very important because they might seem very easy at surface level, but when you sit in the examination, the examiner actually asks much complicated questions. And one must know the basic idea of liberalism, what it is, the basic objectives or characteristics of liberalism. Only then you can relate the idea of this political ideology with Pakistan. Also in essays such questions are asked, because as we discussed, secularism, freedom of religion, freedom of media, freedom of press, freedom of expression, freedom of participation, all these things are somehow included in liberalism, and they are often asked in relation to Pakistan. Also, we discussed about capitalism. When we talk about capitalism, we talk about privatization. So we know that in the recent years, the debate of privatization has been very important in Pakistan. So in that sense, we see liberalism is a very important topic with respect to CSS. Socialism, on the other hand, is quite different from liberalism, as liberalism talks about individual freedom, while socialism carves its niche and it focuses more on economic equality. It believes that the role of government is very important, and the role of government should be central in economic decision making of the country and in the economic decisions of the citizens, such that the gap between the rich and the poor should be reduced. So as we discussed earlier, that in liberalism the role of government was very minimum in the economic affairs of the state, and hence we saw the growth of a capitalist market, the growth of private sector. However, in socialism it's quite the opposite, where we see that the role of government is crucial in regulating the economic affairs and in wealth redistribution, so that a system of equality is created in society. So if we talk about the objectives or characteristics of socialism, we see that socialism basically believes in economic equality as well as government regulation, as I discussed, and it believes in eliminating disease and ignorance, in limiting property and privilege, and in enrichment of ethical and spiritual aspects of an individual's life. So limiting property and privilege is the most important aspect of socialism when we talk about it in terms of economic aspect or in terms of political economy. Also in reference to Pakistan, socialism is asked in this reference, so which I will discuss further, but first we need to understand the objectives of socialism. So socialism does not believe in private property a lot. It believes that the idea of private property should be regulated. It should be in such a way that the difference between the poor and the rich should not exceed. It should be in a way where a wealth redistribution should be possible, where the poor are also given equal opportunity. So basically we can say that government controlled economy is observed in socialism, as well as public welfare is promoted. As we talked about the idea of enrichment of ethical and spiritual aspects of an individual's life, as well as eliminating ignorance and disease. So this directly relates with the idea of public welfare, which is a fundamental aspect of socialism, where where steps like free education and free healthcare are taken by the government to facilitate the citizens. So if we talk about socialism and CSS exams, so we see that the question of socialism can be asked with reference to the Cold War. It can also be asked with reference to the role of government in Pakistan in eliminating hunger, poverty, unemployment. And as I've given an example, can Pakistan adopt socialism? Should the government play a greater role in reducing economic inequality? So basically, this is a question which demands your opinion, but you cannot answer this question without stating facts from history. For example, in this specific question, we can give example from Bhutto's nationalization, how it helped Pakistan. Did it help Pakistan or did it not help Pakistan? At the same time, we can also have a comparative analysis. For example, in India, nationalism had helped them. Nationalization had helped them a lot, where the role of government, where privatization was limited and the role of government was increased, where government had taken over major industries, which actually helped them in the initial years in building their industries. So we need to know that socialism is a system that cannot be adopted just abruptly. There are a few prerequisites that one must look into before adopting the system, and this is how we can also create a cross cultural comparison between Pakistan and India's political system, state examples, and we can also give international examples, but I think regional examples make more sense. So the third political ideology that we'll be discussing today is communism, and communism is defined as the extreme form of socialism that advocates for the abolition of private property and the complete control of the economy by the state. In communism, the main goal is to create a classless society where everyone gets an equal share of resources. And if we talk about the characteristics of communism, they can be defined in terms of, no private property and an increased government control over everything. And it is also defined in the creation of a classless society, lack of individual freedom, censorship, authoritarianism, and collective ownership. So, the purpose of communism is to have strong state control such that the government controls the economy and the individual life as well. So, in this way, we see that communism talks more about authority over the lives of the citizens. And if we talk about communism and CSS exams, so with reference to North Korea or China, the Chinese political system is very important, especially with reference to the current rise of China, the technological warfare. Communism is somehow, linked to the Chinese system, and that is how, the examiner might ask us to analyze the system, or, they might not ask us directly, but somehow the reference is always there. And with reference to Pakistan, if we ask, the examiner might ask us opinionated questions like, if communism could work in Pakistan, should the state have total control over resources and businesses? So, even in such a question, you would require to give examples from other countries, probably from North Korea, China. You would be needed to, you would be required to know the prerequisites for communism to flourish, and can it flourish, can it be successful in a country like Pakistan or not. And when we talk about the idea of censorship in communism, which was mentioned in the slide before this, the idea of censorship actually talks about strong state control, so that the individuals are not exposed to any external idea that might create agitation amongst them against the government. So we see that the idea of communism and authoritarianism exists in countries like China and North Korea, where they do not allow any external media or any external news channel to function, because they want to keep their political systems very closed and intact. So this is a very important table, as this shows a comparison between these three political ideologies. And when you look at the key thinkers, we see that liberalism was supported by John Locke, Adam Smith, and J.S. Mill. So whenever you talk about liberalism, it's very important to talk about these philosophers. At the same time, when you talk about socialism, it is important to mention the key thinkers of socialism, and same goes for communism, because when you mention the key thinkers or philosophers, your paper looks much enriched and more mature. So we also have some modern examples that are mentioned with each political ideology, and you must know examples related to these. You must know case studies, because this adds a lot of value to your paper. So it is important to conclude that no political system is perfect. Each ideology has its own strengths and weaknesses. And as students of political science, we must approach these ideologies with an open and analytical mindset, free from personal biases, likes or dislikes, especially when writing academic or competitive exams. When you appear for CSS exams, your personal biases should be set aside. And if we talk about, the political system that exists in today's world, we see that, most of the countries are an amalgamation of different political ideologies. For instance, China exhibits traits of communism mixed with capitalism, while India blends democratic principles with socialist policies. And this was the video for today. And I would like to know your comments and reviews about which ideology you think should be followed in Pakistan. And please like, share, and subscribe my channel for more interesting videos.